Production of immense possibilities is made possible by the generous support of the Earth and Humanity Foundation. Wendy Selden. Rogue Co-ops, a community-centered collaboration among the Ashland Food Co-op, the Grange Co-op, Rogue Credit Union, and the Medford Food Co-op. Cliff Bar and Company. Elizabeth York, and these additional members of the Immense Possibilities Community Builders Circle. And this evening's program is underwritten by a special grant from the Harry and Yvonne Leonard Charitable Foundation.
It's hard to imagine anything more essential than water.
Water is important for everything.
The global water crisis touches every single sector of life and community development.
The whole program comes down to the students. It doesn't matter about the rain or shine. These kids will be out here. They just want to do the work.
We will be the ones, this generation, you, me, the people that are alive on the planet today, to push the water crisis into the history books.
Welcome to our weekly visit with people who are creating immense possibilities for healthy communities, solutions to all kinds of challenges. One way to get discouraged these days is to look carefully at trends in water quantity and quality in our region and in the world beyond. One way to get encouraged and excited and hopeful is to see what young people are doing about them.
It's hard to imagine anything more essential than water.
Water is important for everything.
When the water is unhealthy, really everything is unhealthy.
There's no way around it. Nothing on Earth can survive without water. I'm Stuart Perlmeter. I'm coordinator for the WELL project, which stands for Water and Energy Learning Lab.
So one of the things you guys need to do before we actually start, all the meters need to be calibrated beforehand.
Basically, we are a small research institute through the schools focused around watershed management. There are 4 teams at the high school. They're all collecting different types of data, and each team is trained separately. There's a water quality team, which goes out every month and pulls samples and analyzes them for pollutants, and we monitor every aspect of the quality of the water. And there's the in-stream habitat team, and they are looking at a stream for viability for fish spawning. Then there's the survey restoration team. They go to old restoration sites, and that team also surveys for fish populations in the stream. And then we also have a 4th team that actually offers free well water testing for the public.
With me now is the coordinator of the project that runs those 4 programs, the WELL, or Water and Energy Learning Lab. He is Stuart Perlmeter, and with him is one of his WELL students, Aspen Lysak. Welcome to you both. It's great to have you on Immense Possibilities.
Thank you for inviting us.
Stuart, it looks like your program's figured out a real win-win for different parties. Tell us who's benefiting and how that all works.
Well, obviously the students involved with the program are the first beneficiary of the project. They learn a great deal of field skills. They learn to work on a job. And the other beneficiaries are our watershed councils that we work for and the agencies that we collect our data for.
These activities are pretty labor intensive and probably outside the budget abilities of some of these agencies now. So if your students weren't doing this work, would the agencies do without this monitoring, or would they somehow find a way to do it otherwise?
Well, it's most likely that they would pare back on how much monitoring they can do, but we're able to do it on a monthly basis, so we offer them a service that would be difficult for them to fulfill with their own personnel and given their budget restrictions.
For those of us who aren't scientists, aren't working in the field like this, help us understand why monitoring is so critical to the outcomes we want.
Well, monitoring provides you with a long-term data set that allows you to look at trends in what's going on in watersheds. And unless you do long-term monitoring and have data over multiple years, it's impossible to really understand what's going on in the creek and whether conditions are improving or declining.
So this just isn't an academic hobby. This is at the heart of doing effective work.
Absolutely. Monitoring is one of the things that agencies often give up first thing, and we're able to fill that void for them.
Aspen, what do you do in the program? Give us an idea of the actual activities.
We do a variety of activities. We do depth and width, length. We also do flood prones and just all kinds of fish counts.
Is there part of it that you enjoy the most?
Probably just the fact that our data is used and we know it is, and collecting it's really fun.
Is there any part that's particularly hard or that you'd rather not do? You could, even though Stuart's here, you can tell me.
Probably just falling in and getting wet, especially in the beginning, because it's kind of a bummer. And then if you don't have an extra pair of clothes, it's even worse.
Looks great on sunny, warm days, but you don't always have sunny, warm days,
No.
do you there?
No.
Aside from the important work of collecting data and how useful that is, what do you think of this as an approach to learn the sciences that you can use for other purposes?
The fact that it's hands-on, you can't learn the same thing in a book that we do out in the field, and we get to experience it, and it's really, I think it's important.
What have you learned about yourself doing this work?
I've learned a lot of leadership, and just throughout the program I've learned kind of the system that we use, and I'm able to train other people and help other people.
What have you noticed develop for some of your students, Stuart, beyond the obvious, literal scientific learnings?
Well, students like Aspen are a perfect example. When she first started, she was quiet, and now she never shuts up. They kind of become more self-confident about themselves. They feel that they're doing something valuable for the community. They feel like when the agency officials come out and watch us, how we work, they're always so proud of the fact that the work they're doing, everyone's always so amazed at the quality of the work they're doing. We are moving to the next phase, which is they've been collecting the data, but it's been left up to myself and the McKinsey Watershed Council to analyze that data before we write reports. We're moving to the next phase, which is these students are starting to go to learn what is called GIS software and learn how to take the data, the raw data, and translate it into map layers that can be used for presentations. And that is a collaboration between ourselves and the University of Oregon. This is a fairly sophisticated computer program that they're learning as high school students how to operate.
Are you going to be doing this, Aspen, this part? Does that interest you?
Yeah, I really like the lab work because we're kind of learning how to process the data that we take. It's not just oh, we collected it, cool.
You're getting ready to graduate. Do you know what you're doing next year, and do you have any goals over the next 5 or 10 years?
I actually got accepted into the U of O, so I'm going to college and I'm going to pursue a career in some type of field work like this because it's had a huge influence on my future.
Did you have the same idea before you entered the program?
I did not. I wanted to be a veterinarian for the longest time, and just throughout experience, I love what we do so much.
Stuart, as programs like yours take root and not exactly privatize, but maybe voluntarize some services that public agencies used to do, is there any chance that you might be shrinking the job market down the road for some of your students who've decided to go into this work and then won't find monitoring jobs in the agencies?
I see our program as not taking away jobs, but actually complementing them because we're able to fill in along waterways that they may not find as primary interests, but do want data for. And so in some ways, it's a win-win situation for the agencies and for my students. And now some of my students are actually working for the agencies that we actually work for, which is great because they're bringing more work to us, which is a nice feeling.
Stuart, what has this program given to you over the years?
I'm now getting students that I know for 6 of the 12 years of public education schooling. They're with my program. And watching them grow up and become part of our family, they regularly go away to college, but they come back to the house and always are looking for a meal. They're part of the family, and that connection with students is so rare with teachers. I mean, teachers, you get a year and then they'll move on and then you're done with them. But I get to see them for sometimes 6 years. Yeah.
Is there a broader understanding of the environment and how it works together that comes out of this for some of these kids?
Absolutely, because so much of the learning is indirect learning. We'll run across, for instance, as Aspen was saying, we'll be in a creek and we'll all of a sudden notice a red. And some of the kids have never seen a red before.
And what is that?
A red is a salmon bed, or basically the salmon nests that they dig in the creek. So we're able to point that out. We've actually been in creeks when salmon have been actually in the spawning process. And that kind of learning is impossible to capture in a classroom or in a textbook or on a videotape.
Stuart Perlmeter is the coordinator of WELL, the Water and Energy Learning Lab. One of his students is Aspen Lysick from Thurston High School. Thank you two so much for coming down to tell us about this program. It's really, really good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The whole program comes down to the students. It doesn't matter about the rain or shine. These kids will be out here. They just want to do the work.
Hi, I'm Seth Maxwell. All of a sudden, life gets interrupted by my friend who takes a trip to Africa one day. She comes back and she's like, "Hey Seth, we gotta get together. I wanna show you these photos. You're not gonna believe what I found." And she just totally shattered my world as she started showing me picture after picture after picture of kids in situations I'd never seen before. So I dug a little deeper and I found crazy stuff. I found out that 1.1 billion people on our planet today don't have access to safe, clean water. That's 1 in every 6 people. How is it that 20% of our population right now doesn't have basic access to water? A kid dies every 15 seconds as a result of drinking contaminated water. I mean, that's 4,400 kids below the age of 5 every day. And I was like, how is this possible? How have I not ever heard of this? It was one of those things where it was like, I was kept awake at night, couldn't sleep, and trying to think about what could I do to plug into it. And I was just like, man, I'm one 19-year-old college student. What can I do to help anybody?
Well, that is exactly the question, isn't it? And here with his answer is Seth Maxwell. Forbes magazine named Seth one of its 30 social entrepreneurs under 30. Seth founded and is the CEO of the Thirst Project. Seth, welcome to Immense Possibilities.
Thank you so much for having me.
So since you asked that question, what can one person do? Tell us what the organization you founded has done.
We travel across the United States educating students about the global water crisis and then challenging those students to actually fundraise and build their own water projects. And so we then build freshwater wells in developing nations and impoverished communities to give people clean water. So we've got about 300,000 students in the course of the last 5 years since we were founded who have done things like dances for water, video game tournaments for water, walks for water, and they've raised under $8 million, just about 100% of which has gone to build freshwater wells in 12 countries, giving over 260,000 people safe, clean water.
That is astonishing. What is it you think about this project, this need, that really turns on students you talk to?
Water, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I believe is the single greatest humanitarian need that we face today when we look at the developing world and our global community. And so the global water crisis touches every single sector of life and community development. So let's say that maybe your heart is really just for education and you want to build schools, or maybe your heart is really for hunger and combating hunger with food security or land tenure. You can't do any of those things if all of your kids are out walking, 4 or 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day, 3 or 4 miles to fetch water from dirty water sources and can't go to school. You can't, educate a community or bring food security if all of your women are out walking for, again, 8 hours a day to fetch contaminated water sources or are, suffering in the hospital from maybe easily preventable waterborne diseases. So I think the thing that for us and the thing for students is it really does impact everything. No matter what your heartbeat is for, no matter what you care about, you have to have water first.
Do you think there is some particular appeal for teenagers, 20-somethings, that may not exactly be there for older people?
What we have done is the way that we tell the story of the water crisis, and the people that we work with are very young. I mean, we're quite young. Most of our team are in their very early 20s to 25, 26, and we send speakers out to a school. It's not a 60 or 70-year-old in a suit and tie saying like don't do drugs. It's someone who looks like them, smells like them, talks like them, acts like them, and in a very real, succinct, direct way tells the story of people without clean water. There are candidly a lot of, as we would call them, old, incredibly wealthy, incredibly intelligent people, but yet somehow 4,100 kids still die every day of the most ridiculously basic preventable diseases. So clearly right now, where they're at, if we want something different, we need students and young people to do something different than's ever been done before. I think that resonates in a very empowering way. When we started, it used to be that 1.1 billion people didn't have access to safe, clean drinking water. Today, that number is 760 million, and the global population has grown. So I think it's exciting for students to be able to see, just in the short amount of time that we've been doing this, tremendous impact is being made. And it's real, it's tangible.
Is there a lesson or two you've learned in building the Thirst Project that might be useful to someone who, like you did, is starting from scratch to tackle a world problem?
Lots. We've made so many mistakes and failed, sometimes really big, sometimes really small along the way. I think part of what's been really helpful is, for us, especially working with students, we've had to be just 100% transparent from day one. And so that didn't necessarily mean like exploding and getting huge and doing tons of projects overnight. We started pretty small. It was a pretty slow burn early on, and in that process, really just committing to the public and committing to students that we were going to share both our victories and our failures with them and what we learned from them along the way. And I think that making that commitment to transparency in that way really engendered a strong sense of even greater support from the people who have been alongside of us, working with us. And so I would say, always be able and willing to say what you don't know. We're always the first to say, like, actually, like, we don't know how we're going to solve that problem, or we don't know the answer to that, but we're going to find the best people, the experts in the world who may know the answer to that, and bring them onto our team or bring them around the table to make sure that when we go to address this new challenge, we are armed and equipped with those best people. But I would say, to that same point, as you commit to be transparent, like, just start acting and fail often. One incredibly valuable principle that I've learned along the way from my friend Nancy Lublin is that if you're not going to be the first, the only, better, faster, or cheaper than someone else, don't start something new. And so we would have been super happy at the beginning to throw in with someone else who was already working with the water crisis if they were activating students, but we realized nobody was activating and educating students exclusively in our space around this issue.
Is your level of hope for a great future, a future that works, higher or lower than when you started all this?
My level of hope and optimism for a better future is 100%, if only because of the incoming and upcoming generations of young people that we get to work with, and also the people that are older than us. I mean, we couldn't have done what we've done without the support of people who have built amazing companies or organizations who we went to and said, hey, will you help us make this happen? Or without, similarly, young students giving of themselves with reckless abandon and throwing themselves all in and saying, we're going to end this. And I don't think it's just a 26-year-old's, naive idealism. We've seen tremendous impact. We will see the end of this issue at the very least well before my lifetime is over, hopefully within the next 2 or just over 2 decades. We will be the ones, this generation, you, me, the people that are alive on the planet today, to push the water crisis into the history books. And after that, we'll take a little break and tackle something else. So yeah, it's an incredibly exciting time to be alive. And I heard someone once say, this group of people who are alive today are really interesting because the younger generations are the first ones who were told from a young age that such emphasis was placed on going to college. So they're highly educated, all of them. Number 2, they're highly under or unemployed. So they have a lot of free time on their hands to learn about and care about things that we always necessarily hadn't been able to. And number 3, they're highly globally connected. So it's this perfect storm of being able to attack and address issues that we've never been able to do before. Young people are incredibly powerful and probably the most like, man, I mean, and I don't even talk about like my generation. I'm talking about people younger than us, are incredibly innovative, incredibly creative. I think they super unfairly get a really bad rap. You know, Time magazine did a cover story last year that called millennials the me generation, and said that they were, you know, the most selfish, self-focused generation to date, which I think every generation has always said about the one that, you know, is succeeding it. But we've seen the exact opposite. I mean, we have seen an army of 300,000 young people giving of themselves in incredibly generous, creative ways. And so I would say, like, you know, man, if you're a student and you're watching, you have tremendous value and power, and we would love to work with you. If you're what we also lovingly call, like, you know, older people, like, man, invest in them and get on board with this and support, because it will only be in working together that we will see, absolutely, the end of this and hopefully many other issues.
On this program and elsewhere, people hear the premise that one person can really make a difference often enough that it might sound like a cliche. If someone really has trouble accepting and embracing that, what would you hope they think about?
It's definitely not all about money, but as a great illustrative tool, especially with the work that we do, what I'd like to say is that $25 once, not once a month, not once a year, one time gives one person clean water for the rest of their lives. And I don't know anyone who can't do that. Maybe over the course of a year, maybe, you know, over the course of 2 years, if you are in a really, you know, challenging taxed financial situation, but everyone can literally change one person's life. And to that end, you know, we always talk about, like, we don't necessarily know whose lives we're impacting when we build the projects that we build and work with the different communities that we work with around the world. It only took one Martin Luther King. It only took one Nelson Mandela. It only took one Gandhi. And so I think we've seen historically, when you change one other person's life, even just one, you have no idea what that impact will be in their local community and in their country and in our world.
Seth Maxwell is with the Thirst Project. Seth, you and your crew are making a huge difference. It's inspiring to hear about. Thanks for sharing it with us here.
Thank you so much for having me.
that's it for this edition of Immense Possibilities. You can find out more information or give us suggestions at immensepossibilities.org, and visit our Facebook page and like and share us there. Thanks for watching. I'm Jeff Gold, and until next time, please do what you can do. Thanks for watching to learn about tonight's Immense Possibility. You can watch any of our past programs anytime at immensepossibilities.org.